Welcome to another episode of A Guy Learning How to Draw. I'm Isaac Elliott-Fisher, and I'm a cinematographer and aspiring cartoon artist, I guess. Cartoonist? Or comic book artist? I guess that's the proper terminology, is cartoonist. As the title suggests, I am slowly teaching myself how to draw better. And as I do, I decided to do a podcast to discuss some of the lessons I've learned along the way. So this episode is something that you may not want to dive into if you already are relatively well established as an artist. And heck, if you are, then why are you watching this anyway? Basically going to deal with basics. We're going to talk a little bit about tools that I'm using, where the ideas came from, as I discovered what tools to use, and a little bit about drawing basics, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So to get started, I'm just doing a little warm-up sketch here of a character that I'm designing for yet another pilot project that we're playing with. It's a bit of a fantasy sci-fi type epic. This female character is kind of like a warrior. And I just did a basic 8-head tall design here, and I'll discuss about what that means in a minute. But first and foremost, workspace and the basic implements, right? So as you can see here on both cameras, I'm on a tilting artist table. It's great to use some sort of surface that brings the artwork to a perpendicular level with your face, so you're looking at it roughly a 90-degree angle. Otherwise, if you're on a table and your art is flat, your drawings will end up being skewed because your perspective or the way you're looking at it is going to be skewed on a flat surface. So it's always best to get it like this. So rather than investing, if you don't have the space or the money or the whatever to buy an artist table, I mean maybe this is about $100 artist table, you can just use a lap board, a piece of plywood or stiff board that you can put on your lap, and if you're sitting up against a table, you can rest the upper part against a table or a pillow or something to get roughly that angle, and then it gives you a hard surface to work around and move your pieces against. Next is pencils. Of course, you can use any old pencil. I was doing a course that was teaching us to use all these different HB and 2H and the whole gamut of pencil lead weights, and that's great because if you use the different weights, you're drawing with a lead or a graphite that's harder, so when you're scrubbing your hand all over the page, it doesn't spread around. But then you use a softer lead that gets you a lot darker line when you're finishing things. For me, I like these mechanical pencils, so I'm restricting myself to basically one lead the entire time, which is fine. I'm not super worried about it. I do end up with a little bit messier page as a result, but it's the sacrifice I'm making for the fact that I like the convenience of a mechanical pencil. In the previous episode, I was using this glove, and you'll probably see me use it again here. And this is a trick I borrowed from a guy named, an artist named Nathan Fox. I was doing an interview with Nathan Fox at New York Comic Con back in 2010, and he finished up a book for heavy metal called Fluorescent Black, which is pretty cool. Very futuristic, sci-fi, crazy people, mutations, and all sorts of neat stuff. And he had a glove like this, which is just a cotton archive glove. You can get them at art stores and framing stores and stuff like that. It's where people who are working with artwork and museum materials maybe would wear these to keep the oils from your hands from contaminating what you're working on. And so he borrowed the idea from animators when he was doing his fine arts background in animation. And cell animators, traditional cell animators are animating with these are animation cells from the Ninja Turtles cartoon, obviously. Let's find a shot of a Ninja Turtle here. These ones are a little worse for wear because, of course, they've been around since the late 80s. In that time, they were drawing a pencil drawing on a piece of animation paper. The only reason why it's specific to animation is these holes across the top, which are registration holes, locks the animation down on the stand, and then they can flip through it. So they're doing it in pencil, and then they would come along and they would trace that pencil initially. Later, they would actually Xerox the hard lines, but they would trace the hard lines with a black ink, and then flip this over and color. This is a little bit, it's got some of the paper stuck to it, but they would color the cell, every cell, by hand from the back. So you'd actually start with things like the furthest forward, the eyes, the teeth, the pads, the highlight colors, and then you would go into the deeper colors, and you can sort of see the layers of how they're painting. Anyway, point is that when you're using this acetate, your hand oils will go all over the plastic, and you'll see it, and it screws up the animation. So they're using these gloves, and you might cut the fingers out like I did, so that you can articulate your brushes a little bit better, but you're not rubbing your hand all over the page. So it's not necessarily that I'm avoiding spreading oil all over my paper, but what I found is that while I'm using a brushed ink or even a pencil while I'm doing big sweeping lines, I'm not A, spreading the pencil all over the place, and B, it makes it a lot smoother to guide your hand across the page, because I found, like, I'm trying to do a big long brush line and my fingers are jumping across the page because, you know, your hand is got moisture on it, so it is sticking to the page. So mechanical pencils, glove, erasers. Kneaded eraser. Kneaded erasers are great because you've got, you know, it doesn't leave any of those funny little, you know, rubber bits that you get from standard pencil erasers. They're great for big cleanups when you're going over a page after you've inked it. You'll clean it up with this. I like the hard-edged erasers or these stick erasers mostly for convenience or quick things, or the fact that, you know, I really just want to take that line away from the edge of her arm there, or, you know, just come around things. These are a little bit more precise, I guess you could say, that I want to get in there and get specific things. Markers. In this case, I'm using microns, and you can use any, you know, brand name of these things. There's 4 or 5 different brand names here. There's another Pigma one. They're basically just your standard felt tip tech pens. I like these microns particularly, as well as the Pigma Senseis as well. They've got some neat ends on them. They're different sizes, 1, 3, 5, 8, and it's basically a millimeter size that you're working with. And, you know, they don't have, the only thing about these that I'm not as big of a fan is, even though if you let the line off just a little bit while you're pushing and letting go, but it's nowhere near the same as if you're using a brush. When you're using a brush, the line variation is almost infinite. I can go from a very, very, very fine line with a brush to a nice fat line and really spread it around. So you get a lot more line variation with a brush. I've experimented with a lot of brushes, including synthetic bristles and different tiny little bristles, ones that were extremely small to ones that were very large. That's a 0, it's only slightly smaller. I do like the fatter ones, but unfortunately these really expensive sable ones made by Winsor Newton, called the Series 7, which seems to be the industry standard brush, they don't make them nice and thick, which some people actually, I actually have seen some people take these thin stems and wrap tape around them meticulously to get a much thicker handle to hold on to if you have trouble hand cramping or anything like that. So basically what I found is that even though I was using brushes with extremely small ends on them just to try to get a very nice fine line, where you find that you can actually get the same line out of this thicker brush or an even thicker one beyond that, because the end of the tip is very much the same. It's just a nice tiny little point. The difference being is that with a thicker brush like a 1 or a 2, this is a 1, if I can go even bigger like a 2 or a 3, it holds a whole lot more ink. So you're not going back to the inkwell all the time, which can get annoying when you're, you know, I've just got that line and then my brush has run out of ink. So just like I say, doing a little rough warm up here of this lovely female warrior. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a Ninja Turtle fan, so I do like the blowing bandana effect that you get when your mask has something cool like that. She's got a little bit of this dangly stuff that happens underneath her chest armor. And in this case, I've done this rough figure pose as an 8-head tall character, which is a roughly standard human size. And what I mean by 8 heads is, which is a pretty common, like if you went to high school art class, you should remember that you take the height of this head and you pretty much measure down to 8 of those, which should reach the bottom of her feet. Her shoulder plates, tighten those up a bit. And as you just go over it again and again, you just tighten things up. This is a nice little warm up. So, I'll worry about the plates on her skirt a bit later. We'll start to a character. Again, 8 head tall, character sketch, pretty loose. Let's start. Let's figure that one out.